you imagine being sentenced to being forgotten to death? Hello and welcome to day 12 of Creepy History, where I uncover chilling facts from the past during spooky season, and today we're talking about oubliettes. Oubliettes are based on the French word oublier, which means to forget. And oubliettes are essentially a kind of dungeon where prisoners would be abandoned to starve to death, or to be forgotten. And they weren't like the typical dungeon or jail cell that we would think of. They were rather deep, and they had a grate at the top to let in light. And this little bit of light would be to torment the prisoners down below with a glimpse of the outside world. In some ways, it's similar to the mesh that we discussed in the Newgate Prison episode. In some rare cases, people inside oubliettes could be kept alive by having food or water thrown down to them, but most prisoners within oubliettes were left for dead. Those within oubliettes would typically starve to death or succumb to disease. This was because the conditions in oubliettes were horrific. Often prisoners within oubliettes would find that they were kept company by the remains of previous prisoners. Oubliettes were also festering with live rats and vermin. Examples of these oubliettes exist in Chillingham Castle and Conway Castle. There's also supposedly an oubliette at Warwick Castle, but it's also speculated that this could be a latrine and not an oubliette. One of the first references in English to an oubliette came from Walter Scott's Ivanhoe in 1819. This comes from the line, quote, "The place was utterly dark, the oubliette, as, I suppose, of their accursed convent." However, given that there are very few references to oubliettes from the medieval times, it's important to take history of oubliettes with a bit of a grain of salt, because a lot of references to oubliettes do date from the 19th century onwards, and if there's anything that people from the 19th century love to do, they love to make the medieval times dark and spooky. According to a paper from Chris Bishop from the Australian National University, he stated that there is evidence that oubliettes do exist, however they're not as common as people would think, because they're rarely encountered in historical and archaeological records. So that means the odds of being left to die in an oubliette are low, but they're never zero.